Okay, so that was deleting. What about the opposite deleting, which is inserting? So inserting some data into the database. Recall we did this with this series of 3 boxes. We have someone's name, so let's say we want Bob, job, we want mechanic, pet, we want bear.jpg. When I click insert, I want to conceptually what I want to do is I want to insert something here that says Bob, job is mechanic, pet is bear, right? And the way we did it in V2, if you recall, was to make an AJAX call, a AJAX post request to the user's endpoint or URL in our backend, in our Node.js backend. And I make a post, which means that I want to post or send data to users. And the data I want to send to be put in the database is this object right here with name, job, and pet, all taken from the respective text boxes here, which is name, job, and pet. And then on success, I send a message and so forth. So what we're going to do is we want to replicate this functionality, but instead of making an AJAX call to our own backend, we're going to directly call Firebase. So to do that, again, we're going to grab the name. So name equals, this time it's called the contents of the insert name box val. Again, it's a good idea to check all of it. Let's console.log name and run. So if I said Bobby mechanic bear.jpg, notice what happens when I click insert. It will say Bobby. That's the person I want to enter. Okay, good. So again, we're going to follow the same pattern of database.ref. And we're going to database.ref of users plus the name, because again, we don't want just Bobby, we want user/Bobby. Because we want to put everything in users. Okay, what do we do now that we have database.ref? Well, we can use the set function again, because recall I'm going to scroll up. Recall we use set here to set the value corresponding to a particular user to an object value. So we're using the exact same .set now down here in the insert button code. So we're going to do .set, and then what are we going to do? We're going to open an object, close an object. We're just going to do this over multiple lines just for clarity, but it doesn't matter. You can write it all in one line if you want, but we're going to do multiple lines. So what do we want to set? We want to set their job and their pet. And lo and behold, the job and pet can be gotten exactly from the old AJAX code. I just paste it right in, fixed the indentation a little bit, and there we go. So I basically read this as if I put Bobby, what did I do? I did Bobby mechanic bear. I would find the ref of user/Bobby and then set the job to mechanic, which is this one, and pet to bear, which is this one. And that's all I need to do. So I do not need any of this AJAX code below, because this is for calling my own backend. And with Firebase, directly from the front end, I can interface with Firebase. So let's see what happens when this code gets run. This database.ref set. We're going to reload. There's always a warning message here because we're using a development version of the Firebase library that says, in production, you should use, the production versions. So we can ignore that. Okay, anyways, let's look what happens on the right side when I put in Bobby. So Bobby mechanic bear.jpg. Let's say hit insert. And lo and behold, we have a new Bobby entry right here. When we expand it, Bobby has job mechanic pet bear. This is exactly what we wanted. We want to be able to insert somebody in, and there we go. We could say Bobby 2. Bobby 2 is a car salesman, and pet is dog. And let's see what happens. Insert Bobby 2 right there. Car salesman, dog. What happens? Let's remove Bobby 2. There we go. Bobby 2 is flashing red and he's gone. Regular Bobby, he is flashing red, he's gone. So now we can insert and delete. The other cool thing about database, the Firebase set function is that it can update a value for an existing user. So let's say Philip here is Professor Cat. Let's say I want to change my pet to a dog. So we can say Philip, let's keep Professor, and then dog.jpg. Now the cool thing is that when we do this, let's see what happens to the right side. Notice how cat is replaced with dog. And I can do bear as well. And when I hit insert, notice how only that is replaced. And the reason why is because the set function call, if some data is already in the database, it will just override the value with whatever you set. So it's not just for inserting new people, it's for actually updating the information for old people as well. So this, I guess, should be called insert or update. Okay, cool. So we can insert, we can delete. The next thing we want to do is this all users button. So we want to be able to get all the usernames of everyone in the database. So conceptually, let me reset so we got everybody back. Okay, so when we reset, Carol, John, and Philip are here. Conceptually, when we hit get all usernames, we want to show that 3 people in the database, Carol, John, and Philip. I don't care about the order of their names, but just I want to get these names out. So recall that in the v2 code, what we did is that we made an AJAX call, a GET request to the user's endpoint in our Node.js backend. And when it was successful, it would call a callback function we defined right here. And the callback function takes in one parameter called data, and then it will console log you received some data with that data, and then it'll set the status HTML to all users : plus that data. Recall that the status HTML is a piece of HTML div. Whoops. So I'm gonna go bottom. Status is here. It's an empty div essentially at the bottom of the page. So it's right here, it's empty, but if you set its HTML, you can actually make it display something on the screen. So it's kind of an additional way to debug beyond just using the console. Okay, so what do we want to do now with all users button? So we're going to comment out this AJAX code, and we're going to write our own code with Firebase. So what we do is we're going to do database.ref user slash, because we want to grab a reference to the top level user slash collection. We want to grab this right here so we can return all the data in users. So when we do this, the way to get one piece of data once from the database is to use a .once function in Firebase with value as its parameter. So this is a bit indirect, but this basically, to read in English, this says, get me the database, get me the user slash collection of the database. Now read it once and read a value out of it. And what do we want to do once we have a value? We want to call this callback function, which is a function that takes one parameter. That parameter is called a snapshot object. To get the data out of the snapshot object, we have to do one more thing. We have to do snapshot.val. So this is part of the Firebase API. It says to get the data, you actually need to take the snapshot object that the callback passes you and then call .val parentheses, double parentheses on it in order to get the data. And now that we have the data, we can actually just directly copy and paste the success code from our original AJAX call in v2. And so why are we doing this? We're doing this to just show that the end result is going to be exactly the same for the most part. So let's run this code and see what happens. So again, what this .once value does is that it says read me one value from the database right now. Okay, I'm gonna reload. And let's see what happens when I click all users. I get all usernames. Ready? And click. Okay, so it says you receive some data. Good. The data is an object, Carol, job engineer, pet bear, John, and Philip. It's an object with 3 objects inside, which perfectly mirrors this, right? So I'm saying what I grab out of users, I want to grab these 3 things, which is exactly there. But the issue is that when I try to console log it, it just says it's an object because it doesn't know how to go inside and print out the specific parts, because this is just one big object, so doesn't print very well. So in fact, what we want to do to make it look like v2 is that we actually want to say object.keys data. Whoops. And object.keys data. So recall that what objects.keys does is it grabs the keys out of the object, Carol, John, and Philip in this case, and returns it as an array. So that's exactly what we want. So we're going to say get all usernames, and when we do that, this will return and use object.keys to make this into an array of Carol, John, and Philip, which is the keys here, Carol, John, and Philip, and then it displays it to the screen in the HTML status, which looks kind of ugly because it's converting a list into an array into a string, which is just, adds commas. But that's basically what we want. We want to, this pattern is how you read data from a Firebase database. I'm going to erase the AJAX code below. this pattern of database.ref, get the collection, and then do a .once value.